So an idea that was revolutionizing back in the 70s and 80s with the Atari 2600 with games like E.T. to now being one of the most profitable, creative, and expansive industries on the market, video games truly are something that stands to the innovation and excitement of just giving experiences no one thought possible. As well as giving us Qbert. Man, that game just exists. But gaming in general, dude, it just loves to establish worlds, stories, and characters that could just be as relatable as your average novel or Indiana Jones film, and they have opted for so much in terms of just engaging with the player and creating a community, discourse, and even debate on how to improve and ensure that the franchise succeeds in the long run. For the most part at least. Sometimes games even pop out at our eyes with such incredible visuals and attention to detail that it makes your mind salivate on the idea of wanting to play that game right there and then upon its release, especially after hearing of news and updates and all that kind of stuff. And dude, when that sweet baby finally arrives on store shelves, you are just on board to get it firsthand and witness what's to come of such an incredible game. Months later, after buying multiple other ones that you felt the same way about. Man, talk about being polygamous, am I right? Yeah, for that's indeed the way of the gamer nowadays, as the notorious backlog haunts us to our very core. The one big chip in our shoulder that honestly never stops to grow as we continue to experience new games and even older ones that we never once tried in the past. I mean, look, it's not my fault I didn't grow up playing Game Boy games as a kid, so don't blame me for talking about Pokemon Generation 1 and 2 in 2023 because I was just a big old baby back in the day. And listen, also as a video game connoisseur myself, backlogs are just something that we're gonna have to deal with on the daily, but you never truly wonder why is it that the list of games you wish to play just continues to grow more and more throughout your video game career. Like, one of the biggest things about being a gamer is that we have a bunch, and I mean a bunch of games at our disposal, from RPGs like Final Fantasy 16 to simple platforming adventures like Mega Man 11. There's always something for the gaming experience that enriches and brings new flavors to the gaming catalog, even if that wallet of yours is gonna need some major CPR afterwards. Like, yeah, may that credit card breathe because it's about to see the eyes of Super Mario Bros. Wonder and Sonic Superstars very freaking soon. And regarding the backlog, it just tends to lead to a big old cycle of having to catch up with a game and then having to play over 8 hours a day just to get a quote-unquote full experience of sorts. And while in some cases it may seem like a blast, other times it gets a bit maddening. So many times this has happened to me during this gaming season alone, where while I was busy traversing through Talon Overworld 4, the Metroid Prime Remastered, and enjoying an old 2001 Game Boy classic, then 2 months later I somehow entered the cyberspace world with Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, and that Legacy Collection, pretty nice. I looked forward to that one, truly incredible, but then somehow I had to skip that and then having to go save Hyrule once again with Tears of the Kingdom for a hefty price of $70. Yeah, as you can see here, the games are just gonna keep piling up one after the other, and I'm sure many have started feeling this way with plenty of other games too. Even with the older games and console generations back in the day, that idea of having to play catch up was something that every gamer had to deal with, and while you want to get a go at Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, you ended up pushing that one aside for DMC Devil May Cry instead, which, hey man, you do you. JRPGs and fighting games are like the notorious genres in the backlog setting, where it takes so much time and effort in playing them that over time, just to start another game after plowing through 80 plus hours of Persona 5 Royal or Xenoblade Chronicles to even Street Fighter 6, you kind of feel a little burned out and you don't want to start another game for a couple of months, or at the very least until Pokemon Legends Arceus shows up at your doorstep. Also, plus, let's be real, Pokemon fans, that game is just peak. Other times, the adverse effect can also take place where you would rather turn your brain off and play a game like Sonic Mania or Super Mario Odyssey thousands of times before taking the dive into a franchise like the Tales series, which, speaking of that game also, I definitely gotta finish Tales of Beseria because god, that one was one hell of a game. With the fighting game genre specifically here, they too like to be the type of games that gamers sort of leave behind in their backlogs because unlike JRPGs, those behemoths are built to be technical, and I mean that in every single freaking way. Games like Street Fighter to Tekken 7 and Guilty Gear Strive, for me at least, are often the games that, while super exciting upon release and built for that insane replay value with friends or solo and online, at best in your heart of hearts that you want to go and settle for simple games like Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Backlogs also like to fill up during the holiday and sale seasons, where this is usually time where the wallet of every gamer finally gets to take a semi-vacation of sorts before being thrusted into the information section, all just to buy a combo pack of the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy because hey, look, it was 50% off. Just by entering the main page of Steam or the Epic Game Store, you'll see that almost everything at one point was given a discount of sorts, and paired with that ambition of wanting to try out new franchises out there like Persona or Shin Megami Tensei to Final Fantasy or even Crash Bandicoot, the Backlog sees this as the perfect opportunity to fatten itself up and demand more games to be fed. In my case though, thankfully I don't fall into the traps of the Steam page as much since I'm not really much of a PC gamer to begin with, but I have done my fair share of bulk discount buying on the Nintendo eShop because yeah, I'm a Nintendo fan. But listen, during those bulk discount buyings, I got games like Hollow Knight and the 0/ZX collection for $15 each. There was even Digimon Cyber Sleuth Complete Edition, like dude, that was worth $20, and even Sonic Mania at one point for a measly $10. And look man, I also can't forget Azure Gunvolt Dual Pack because wow, the Mega Man brain rot is getting real. Sure, since then I have played these games with the exception of Hollow Knight, because let's be real, that game is gonna be stuck there for all backlog eternity. The idea that these games were on sale is what led them to be purchased and have the possibility of being played one day and ultimately stuck on the backlog. But that still isn't one of the biggest things that cause a backlog to grow, ironically. I got it! What if the community of those favorite franchises out there, you know, those beloved games, decide to push them to other people so hard that they unintentionally gatekeep those games and nobody wants to play them and are now in the backlog? Franchises of all kind have these amazing communities that often engage in discourse and allowing, or rather I should say at some points, disallowing a person to experience these games that they once fell in love with. And when we make that decision to try the game out, we kind of just push it aside because we either think people are too hyped about the game upon its initial launch, or we simply just don't get the vibe, sometimes both in certain cases. Oftentimes this is reflected heavily on the indie titles, unfortunately. We're guilty as charged here. We don't really seek these games out until it's absolutely necessary, or at the very least until a comparison between Spark the Electric Jester and Sonic dies out for once. That and also the Dark Souls comparison one too, you know, can't forget that one time Crash Bandicoot games were compared to Dark Souls level of difficulty, am I right? God, 2017 was a really weird year. But communities being the driving force of influence does make or tremendously break the need to play a game at the moment, and regardless of what the game is and its overall reception, you just feel like you would best put your time somewhere else. In my case here, I felt this way with a little game called Omori here, where yeah, I'm never touching this game, I gotta be honest. You see, Omori is a game that is enjoyed by many and was promoted back in the day during its hype when it released on the PC in 2020 and then later on for the Nintendo Switch about a year or so later. And while a good game conceptually, I know that in my case, I felt like this game was something that didn't really need my attention as opposed to Bayonetta 2 on the Nintendo Switch. God, flaunt those legs, Mama Bayonetta. And sometimes these franchises get so much love and praise that it does often get very blindsided at times, so whenever someone disagrees with how a game was reviewed or critiqued, then things start to show their true colors. And listen, I am also guilty of charge of this too because I am a very passionate gamer, and passion does come with a flair at times. Xenoblade Chronicles here seems to be a perfectly good example of a series gone backlog in this case, because it doesn't really feel like a game worth diving into when compared to longer lasting RPG franchises out there like Dragon Quest, Persona, and even of course Final Fantasy. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a neat franchise for sure, easily one of my favorites in top tier, but it is often played with a generic online opinion of, oh, but it has big booby girls and anime slapped onto it that upon first glance, you kind of just want to go back to the basics, you know? And with the regard to other RPG games out there that are criminally underrated, like The World Ends With You Duology, Octopath Traveler, and Live Alive, these games are also thrown into the backlog because they rarely get good marketing, which kind of sucks because, oh lord, you're missing out on Neo The World Ends With You because that shit is peak. Bandai Namco's Tales franchise is also a backlogged RPG series, as while underrated Tales of Arise sounds and, well, is, especially now there's gonna be upcoming DLC soon, it's still going to the backlogs for many because I just prefer playing Sonic Frontiers and speedrun through the cyberspace levels with a spin dash. If there was like a theme regarding backlogs here, I would say that it's because you bought those games at the right moment at the right time, but you never thought once of playing them because you bought so many of them at a discount. Or it could be because of gatekeeping and communities out there that are pushing a game so hard that you kind of don't understand the vibes of those, like we already said also. Or it could just be because, let's face it, these games can sometimes be uncharted territories. You see, while we can be safe knowing games like Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Kirby, Mario, Sonic, and Mega Man will all be fun times because of their familiarity, other titles are just gonna get boot kicked to the backlog because, let's be real here, they're unfamiliar, and when something's unfamiliar, then you don't feel like as confident stepping into that game's world just yet. That or because you're bored as hell and probably feel like spending hours and hours doing absolutely nothing in a game like Animal Crossing New Horizons. Yeah, I know what you are. Uncharted territories is what plagues the backlog the most, and it's in direct response to how we feel about wanting to try those games out. Does this game provide something I'll enjoy? Is there like a replay value that would want me to play it again at some point? Is there love and care poured into it? These questions hit on repeat for us time and time again whenever we make that sweet purchase, and it leads us to just neglect that game we bought and wanted to try out in favor of new ones that are just well known to be good experiences through and through. That's why again, indies are typically the best example in terms of how backlog games can get because they're brand new experiences that perhaps were never done before. Omori, like I mentioned, while it does utilize mechanics from games like Earthbound, the theme and scope of it is vastly different than that typical Nintendo RPG. Hollow Knight being one of the biggest backlog games there is, despite being a Metroidvania infused with Dark Souls level of exploration and difficulty, and though that sounds incredibly unique, it also just sounds like a big old risk worth taking because maybe you feel like you bought the game out of spite rather than just pure curiosity. Or you were probably forced into it, I don't know, like I said, you do you. And so because of that unfamiliarity, the mountain of games are just gonna start to grow exponentially and thus never fully getting cleaned up and swept out in the process, which is another shameful truth that I gotta admit because I'm part of this problem, but one that just needs to be expressed regardless. However, despite the whole idea that at the end of the day, backlogs are just gonna keep growing and growing and there's nothing we can do as that monster's just gonna keep feeding itself for some bizarre reason, what we should really focus in a positive manner is that, hey, we got so many games to play at some point. In some weird shape or form, the best analogy I can think of is kind of like a squirrel that sets aside a lot of nuts for the winter season, so when it's all resting during its hibernation period, it has a lot of food to eat in the process while it waits for spring. And I think for backlogs, it's kind of like that nut that we get to relish when that time comes for us to one day be bored and want to try out new gaming experiences. Perhaps maybe at some point in your career you want to try out the Uncharted games or even the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy, and now after playing what you think there is left to play, it's sitting right there in your backlog and you might also just get to experience the greatest adventures with both Nathan Drake and Lara Croft. Or maybe you're in an itch for an RPG experience that you never once had, and there's plenty of games out there from Chrono Trigger, Persona 5 Royal, Xenoblade Chronicles, and the Tales series, all there to satisfy your very first RPG time. Hell, in the visual novel genre that a lot of people tend to forget exists, you have games like Danganronpa and Ace Attorney and even Professor Layton that's going to be arriving soon on the Nintendo Switch that are all going to be there waiting to be played at some point whenever you're just in the mood to be a silly detective or a lawyer ready to take action and justice in the palm of your hands. The point is, the possibilities are really endless here with your backlog. And so backlogs are just pretty interesting in the gaming world, and I hope I highlighted that point and why is it that they grow and grow and grow for who knows how long at this point. There's probably somebody out there who was watching this video and has like 1,000 games in their backlog, so yeah, sorry not sorry for shouting you out there. But, you know, they're just cool. We got tons of games to play at one point. So, hey, if you got Half-Life 2 there, go play Half-Life 2. You got Portal, go play Portal. Bioshock, there it is right there. Tekken, Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, Mario Kart, they're all there. So, have fun. Have at it with your backlog. Because in my case, Sea of Stars is right there. You know, I really want to try that game out. Heard lots of good things about it. Just saying it. You know, I really want to play that game so badly.